Okay. So I was just mentioning that it was a little bit unfinished, so technology proved me right. I wanted to apologize if I don't do Kitra justice in this introduction, but I also have no doubt that she will, and she doesn't need my praise because her work, which you've been seeing in the exhibition the past 4 days, speaks for itself. And if you hadn't yet, then you will soon find out more about it in Kitra's talk. I will say that with so many amazing speakers the past 4 days, and thinkers and makers, it was very difficult to pick a closing talk for the festival. But we decided on Kitra very simply because her friendship and her free spirit really inspires us, and because of the depth of her work and of her heart and of her mind. I'll just go with a few facts and let her speak. She's a freelance documentary photographer, a videographer, a photo and video artist, and a TED speaker. She's a contributing photographer to National Geographic magazine and has a BA in philosophy from McGill University and an MA in visual and media anthropology from the Freie Universität in Berlin. She's the recipient of numerous grants and awards, including 2 Canada Council grants for the visual arts, a 2016 TED Senior Fellowship, a Pulitzer Center for Investigative Reporting grant, an artist residency at Prim Center, the International Center of Photography's Infinity Award, the first prize for the World Press Photo. You don't want me to go through these? Okay. Anyways, it's lots of grants and lots of awards. Thank you for being here, and yes.
Could we bring down the lights? I'm going to start. Yai, dai, 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 yai, dai, 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 yai, dai, 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 yai, dai, dai.
Should be very careful about judging God. Avraham Avinu said he wanted to know what kind of judge you are, the judge of the world. God was challenged, and we do challenge God all the time. I don't see you, you're far, you're obscure, I don't connect to you right now, but it's endless and it's exquisite to grasp for, to seek, to respond to the godly, the hints of God, the hints of the eternal, the good and the calm of life, that God will be always where we are, wherever we are, even in our despair. God's so close. And if you know it, if you've realized that, you're not going to be in the worst of all places, which is solitude and isolation.
Thank you. So that was my father in 2009, and I grew up as the daughter of a rabbi, one of 5 children, and we moved from place to place, different congregations. We're American, Canadian. I grew up in Sweden, and I just want to give you this taste of my father's voice and this very personal and spiritual story that I'm going to share with you today. So here's another clip from this interview from 2009, but with Melody Pearson.
I'd like to ask you how, because I don't know very much about you, were you, how did you find your how do I put this? Your neshama. How did you make your connection? Did that just happen? Did it evolve? Did you wake up one day when you were 5 and say, "I want to be a rabbi"? Or
I ran from it. Oh my gosh, it was the hardest of all things.
You ran from it? Did you?
The last thing, every male in our family is a rabbi. It's the last thing I wanted to be. My father was the highest, most beautiful of all, and he was in the congregation that didn't know, that didn't ask him, didn't ask the questions, didn't know what they had, the treasure that was there.
Really?
So I said.
So you wanted to be an accountant, and then you changed your mind?
All of life is art. It should always be. Always just wanted to understand how to find art in religion. And the religious aspect is really the call for the highest, most exquisite, sublime way of living in every aspect, always to see the art of being.
Well, I would agree with you with that, only because I'm a little bit partial to the arts, being a musician and so forth. But so
on that dimension always.
So at a certain, so you kind of ran from it, but then you couldn't because I
care so much about people's love within their families, and I care so much that everything should be on the level of seeing the real infinite that we all have inside us, the great gifts that are near us. And so I get to share that all of us should be philosophizing about life. All of us should really look at the theology of being and evaluate how deeply we know the truths of beauty and love and God.
So in 2011, funnily enough, I was traveling with hobos around America. I'm a documentary photographer. Most of my time is spent kind of moving from community to community, telling stories about those communities. What I really see is like photographing from the outside in. So like a subject kind of passes through me, and I develop a close relationship with a subject and tell their story, but it's very much one of like coming through me. So I was traveling with train hoppers, and at the time I was in Portland, Oregon. I was with a group. We were sleeping under a bridge. It was Saturday, the Sabbath, and I get a phone call from my mother, and it's Shabbat, the Jewish day of rest. And that's really not, it's uncommon that she would call me on a Saturday, because in Judaism, we don't use electronics on the Sabbath, or my parents don't. Growing up, we didn't. And so I picked up the phone, and my mother told me that my father, he'd had a stroke, a very severe brainstem stroke. And I went to sleep under our bridge that night with my friends, and in my dream that night, my father came to me, and his demeanor was the most vicious thing I had ever experienced. He was cruel. I started crying. He laughed at my cries. And I woke up with just tears coming down my eyes. Like, when you wake up and you're crying and you don't even know, like I've been crying all night. And in that moment, I felt this stroke has taken my father away. It's turned him into the very opposite of what I know, and I'm lost. And so from the next day, I got on a plane and flew back to Montreal, where my family lives and where my father is a rabbi of a congregation. And I had such fear walking into that room. What is going to have changed? How everything is lost. And my mother had prepared me for coming in. She said, you know, his brainstem strokes are very severe. And basically what happens is you lose all of your body is lost. You lose your ability to breathe. You lose all ability to move, basically from the eyes down. But your brain, your mind stays the same. You're full cognition. And she said, like, in order for us to communicate, we're going to have to use this system where we recite the alphabet, and he's going to blink at the letters, and this is how we're going to communicate. And the doctors hope that over time, he will, you know, the swelling will go down, and hopefully more of him will thaw, and he'll be able to come out and hopefully regain voice, but we don't know. And so I walked into the room and started reciting the alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. At K he blinked. And then he blinked at I, and then at T, and at R, and A. And you have to think, it's not easy to communicate letter by letter, and the amount of time that it takes, and kind of the frustrations that can go into trying to do this. And he said, Kitra, my beauty, this is a blessing. And that was a shock. That was unexpected. That is not what I was feeling in that moment. This is not a blessing. This is the greatest tragedy that has fallen our family. How are we going to overcome this? What does, like, again, that feeling of everything is lost. But over the day, over the days, the weeks in the ICU, came to understand that that is not his reality. And the reality that you see from the outside of somebody else is not always the reality of how they're experiencing the world. And when someone tells you, no, this isn't my tragedy, this is my blessing, you know, as someone who loves someone else, you have to say, okay, I'm going to go with you on this journey. Yes, I'll suspend my emotions for your new truth. And, you know, as a documentary photographer, I started also photographing kind of what was going on, but I didn't feel that documentary captured that other truth. It captured the room, it captured, you know, a man on a breathing tube. But there was no way in just a photograph, the way that I traditionally photographed, that I could capture this, what was going on inside. He was bursting to communicate, wanting to, you know, he wanted to write sermons, paragraphs he would hold in his head, and we would come around taking shifts, my siblings and I and my mother, sleeping on the ICU floor, shift after shift, reciting the alphabet so that he could write his poetry, right? He wanted to counsel people. People came, like nurses would come into the room, and he would, through us, hold them and say, like, who are you? I want to meet you. Tell me about your love. And he had this belief that our room was our temple of healing, and anyone who walked into our room was coming into healing as well. That healing is two ways. You don't heal someone else. You can only enter a relationship of healing if you're willing to be healed yourself. So with his condition, we would we had to move his muscles, because otherwise, we had to move him, because otherwise, think any body like staying still for so long, you crumble completely. And so this is our temple, or my rendition of our temple of healing. And so we would move his body hour upon hour. Someone would work on the transcription, someone else would work on just the body. And as we would do this, we would sing. In Jewish tradition, there's kind of our sort of spiritual practice is one. There's many different ways to connect to God in Jewish tradition, but one that I really connect to is through singing. And so as I would move his body, I would sing, and we also have this tradition of singing nigunim, which are songs without words, and sometimes this comes from the liturgy, and you start with the words in the song, and then you carry on. So I would sing, Shalom Aleichem Malachei HaShayres Malachei HaShayres Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim Ay Kadosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this song is a song we sing on the Sabbath, and it's the song to welcome in the Sabbath Queen. And when you're sitting around a table, we sing, Peace be upon you, minstrel angels, messengers of the highest one, from the King, King of kings, the holy, blessed be, blessed he. And it's, in our tradition, there's, we believe, or so they say, that angels come in and look into the windows of the Sabbath home, of the table, as the family's sitting around the table. And they look and they say, is there harmony here? And if there's harmony, we will bless. And I don't believe that there isn't harmony that they don't bless. But so in singing some of these songs, it was like trying to welcome in the angels and say, come into our temple of healing and be a part of, bless our healing, so that we can heal, so we can all heal, not just him physically. It's really not just about physical healing, although that's what we desperately need, but it's about healing our souls also, and our entire, this is, in a way, it was like the body was ripped from the mind, and the task at hand was to piece it back together. So I see my father as my collaborator. He's my collaborator, and so over the course of, this happened 2011. He's regained some abilities, so he can breathe by himself. He can. He has a voice. It's his voice now. And we've continued to write. And also I have a close friend who's also a poet. And when I'm not in Montreal, like, he also has other collaborators that he works with, but we've continued to write. So I really wanted to bring, in my vision, this kind of talk would be him doing his poetry and me presenting my art, but I also want to bring you some of his writings about his experience.
You have to believe you're paralyzed. to play the part of a quadriplegic. I don't. In my mind and in my dreams, every night I see man float over the city, twirl and swirl with my toes, kissing the floor. I know nothing about the statement of man without motion. Everything has motion. The heart pumps, the body heaves, the mouth moves. We never stagnate. Life triumphs up and down.
So I just want to read some of the other writings. After coming to consciousness, the mind narrowed to simple whispers. I was barefaced and raw matter. The blessing to bless in Hebrew is Yisa Adonai panav elecha, or may God lift your countenance. Ya'er panav elecha vichuneka, may God's light illuminate your face and bring forth your grace. Or as King David said, from God's divine light we see light. At that moment of arising from the stroke, I felt God lift my face and pierce into an inner glow. I spoke to that light and from it all at once. I understood that everyone gets this brilliant radiance early in life, and I know that it's a mere temporary flash to return to again and again. This is enlightened consciousness. It's a flash that I ever try to retrieve. Within the dark. In this purgatory where I have lived, where I don't, accusing lies ascend, spearing words that don't exit my body. I belong to the whole, but I can't find my substance. I have the red sun's bleeding blood all in vain. What will emerge will purify me. A tree is no longer a tree. Everything now is an impossibility for me to possess. All seems dispossessed. Everywhere we are estranged. Nothing has citizenship, yet the work is inside, a melting of bone to sinew. It is the mind that must take over now and become its own inner sky's sun.
There's a new kind of slumber with a stroke. You got dizzy, your head. There's a mini explosion, and there is no up, there is no forward. It's just twisting like a spaceman's walk tethered to the intangible. It's amazing. I was lifted into a waist. I said to myself, remember you're in the air for real now. Hover over this bed and be there more than under it.
There's a new kind of slumber with a stroke. You get dizzy, lurid. There is a mini explosion and there is no up, there is no forward. It's just twisting like a spaceman's walk, tethered to the intangible. It's amazing. I was lifted into a hoist. I said to myself, remember you're in the air for real now. Hover over this bed and be there more than you are under it. And I just want to end with one more song from our time working on his body. And in this tradition of nigunim, you know, it comes from the Hasidic tradition, kind of this ecstatic idea that, you know, you don't need to be learned to connect to God. You can connect to God through anything that you do. Prayer comes in every form. In sweeping the ground, you can pray. In singing a song, you can pray. It's this ecstatic tradition. And so I would, you know, in this tradition, you sing for you can go 20 minutes on one song, and we would do that as we were working on his body. So this one's Tzama lecha nafshi Kama lecha basari be'eretz ve'oyev pli ma'ayayim ay 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 Came by Kodesh Chazi Zichois Lirois Suscha Uyoy Kvoyoy Decha Came by Kodesh Chazi Zicha Lirois Suscha Uyoy Kvoyoy Decha Oy, oy, ay, 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 and Psalm 63, and it's my soul thirsts for you, my flesh longs for you, in a desolate and dry land without water. So I thirst to see you in the sanctuary, to behold your might and glory. Thank you. So we can do questions and answers, and you can ask me about this body of work or anything about photojournalism, whatever feels right for you. We can also do no questions, because I know it's hard to like ask questions maybe about whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm fine.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering if you still have dreams where you meet your father or you receive messages.
Yeah, sometimes I have very vivid dreams, so and I try to write them down when I can. So I have a long this, amazing document that I love to go back to and read all kinds of things. Yeah, sometimes I do have dreams, and sometimes he's walking, and sometimes he's not, and sometimes because he does a lot of he's still quadriplegic, and I wouldn't exactly say he feels like he's moving at lightning speed. He's like, oh, it's going too fast, but he from the outside, it's I don't. It's very hard to maintain a full body because you work on one area and then the other one goes back, and it takes it's very expensive to do physical therapy, and so we do what we can, and we do it so that he can maintain his physical, so that he can carry on his spiritual. And he's the rabbi emeritus at our synagogue in Montreal, and so he continues to counsel people and to write sermons and to write his poetry, and we collaborate.
My question is about your job. I mean, do you think it was a real help for you, the fact that you were a documentary photographer when this illness came for your father? I mean, it really helped you to deal with it better?
Yeah, I love what I do so much because I am given this permission to be with people in their most intimate moments, and I would characterize the type of photography I do as photography there's many different art forms in what I do, and the part that I feel I excel at more than photography is in developing that trust and that relationship with people, that closeness and intimacy. And that's the challenge, and that's the task, to create real relationships. And it's the privilege to create real relationships so that the person is able to open themselves up to me, and via me, you, the audience, gets to see an element of truth that they were willing to share with me. So that's why I said before, it's really like a median kind of passing through. In this case, it was about telling the story from inside out. And so I believe storytelling, narrative, it's life-giving. It's how we connect. It's how we give each other truths from one person to another. And it's that ability to, storytelling is how we're vulnerable with each other and with our truths. I mean, there's storytelling in everything. So coming to this moment, doing documentary work, it prepared me to ask that question: how can I relay his truth to an audience? Okay, thank you.